Welcome to LexTalk, World's talk show presented by Clickaway Creators. Today, we have Dr. Balakrishnan Gopalakrishnan. Dr. Gopalakrishnan is a dynamic and result-oriented legal professional with over 4 decades of experience in legal areas, encompassing a lot. He has a lot of things in the spectrum, such as banking, corporate capital market and business laws, cross-border transactions and procedures, HR issues, employee grievances, litigation, international arbitration, and mutual fund documentation, litigation, and so on and so forth. He has been part of some of the known law firms across India, being founding partners of all those law firms. So we'll talk about his journey and we'll try to understand more about his career, his cases, and how he manages his time. So without further ado, let's welcome him. Hello, Dr. Gopalakrishnan. How are you, sir?
Thank you, and I'm glad and immensely pleased that you've given a lot of introduction about me. So if time permits, I'll just introduce myself about what you said. Is that so born and brought up in a city in Kerala. I came to this big city about 34 years back. So before that also, law was always my forte. And in the sense, I just belong to a trading family who's into business, and so income tax and sales tax, and that was what I heard, and accountancy, and this is what I heard and grew up. And after that, my father was also one of the leading income tax advocates, so income tax and sales tax advocate. He didn't go to any other law. So we are, being a business family, I know accountancy. So in fact, I wanted to study accountancy and, see the nuisance of keeping accounts and, becoming a chartered accountant. But fate would have it, I was ushered into law. And after law, completing law, I joined the practice with my father. And, I was doing the same thing, income tax and sales tax. And, I was in a position to appear before the tax tribunals at a very young age. Perhaps the reason is that, when you are acquainted with when you are coming with your father, and, there is no question of the father stopping and saying that you don't know anything, and, like a junior, and, therefore, and I had that opportunity. And subsequent to that, I had the desire to know about the security laws and the company law. And therefore, I had to migrate to Mumbai. Mumbai was the best place to do that. And I would say again, it's a very strange coincidence that, I had to come to this city. And normally people come to the city in search of jobs. And, so here I was searching to come to the city for learning purpose. And therefore, I got the opportunity to be selected as a middle management officer in the erstwhile Unit Trust of India called UTI. That time it was a statutory corporation. And it had two good things. One is that it was the mutual fund, the only mutual fund in India. So mutual fund was not known to Indians, and that was the only mutual fund. There was absolutely no competition. There was no regulator like SEBI or anybody. So whatever they say is the mutual fund, and whatever they do is the mutual fund. And also a mutual fund as well as a term lending institution. And it was classified as a lending institution under the company's law. At that time it was Section 4. They were classified as a development institution. So that it with IDBI, ICICI. That time all of them were not banks, and UTI used to give loans. So that is something strange, and because a mutual fund garnering money from the people, and while it is investing in the stock market, it is also giving term lending. It was, in fact, I would say, it was doing an unlicensed banking business. So all the ingredients of a banking business was there, and nobody questioned them. And then when the Unit Trust of India was there, and of course, they were also big players in the market. When at that point of time, if one is to remember, that if the market goes down, there will be a call from the finance ministry, and UTI will enter the market, and then push it up by buying certain scripts, and so that the stock market always remained very nice in that way. And it was a part of the government institution also. It was a public sector institution and set up by RBI, and later it went to IDBI, and that was a major. Then when I was there, and I was a deputy general manager there, and at that time, two things happened to me. One is that point of time, the Consumer Protection Act was passed in 1986 for the first time. So that was a new act, and it was a kind of, even today, it is an informal court. At that point of time, it was what you call as a Chinese court, in the sense, the members of the forum or the district forum has two well-known people and one judicial member, and, it was how it was run. So UTI at that time, after the Harshad Mehta fiasco, floated a scheme called Master Gain. And that still remains to be one of the biggest scheme under the Guinness Book of World Records, where more than 60 lakh people subscribed for that scheme. Even today, it is a record in a one mutual fund scheme. So nobody was equipped to handle that kind of an investors. So what happens is the certificates or the investment certificates, the certificates issued showing the investment, I mean, if it is addressed to one X person, it reached Y person, and Y person in turn sold it to somebody, because a face value of 10 rupees was being sold at 17 rupees, 20 rupees. And therefore, many of the people at that point of time, investors, actual investors, came and complained that they have not got their certificate. And when UTI, when we searched or when we investigated, we found that those certificates or those investment certificate, which is a privately traded, it is not a listed entity, let me tell you. So were traded by people who received it. And therefore, it went into a big loop. And therefore, there were a lot of consumer forum cases filed against UTI. So somehow, as fate would have it, I was made in charge of dealing with such cases. That came to 7,500 cases at a time. So it was a trial and error method. And, so maybe 20 years back, and therefore 25 years back. So I was much more younger, and therefore, what happened is, so I took up the challenge and went flying and arguing the cases in most of the forums. And subsequent to that, we were able to settle with those investors to a great extent. So that was first of my, completely where the leadership quality in me came out, not because I wanted it, because, it gave me an opportunity. I would say it is all an opportunity which came to me, and that opportunity came. And subsequent to that, in the year 1994, when 1991, India wanted to liberalize, so the license Raj was a little fading away. And under the stewardship of the then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, and liberalization started. And therefore, they said that, they wanted to set up a world-class technology-driven private sector bank. Okay. So what happens is, this is contrary to what was happening in India, because in the 70s, 60s and 60s, the end of 60s, 70s, and even in the early 80s, what was done was government of India, nationalized private sector banks. So many of the banks in India now, which we call as PSUs, were once a private sector banks, which were nationalized. So after some 14 years, the same ruling party thought, under a different leader, thought that it has to be privatized. And therefore, that time the investment criteria was 100 crores was the capital. So UTI was asked to set up a bank. And UTI, under the UTI Act, as it stood then, had an enabling provision to do anything which is necessary for the betterment of their mutual fund industry. And banking is the most important thing. That time, this internet banking was all not there. So everybody has to submit an application, and that application, and along with the check, goes for collection. So banking was the intermediary which which completed the transaction. And therefore, banking is the most important player. And therefore, UTI was asked to set up a bank called UTI Bank. That is 100% owned by them, but later it was reduced to 40% because LIC, GIC, and all became the shareholders. And it is an irony in the sense, see a public sector, government of India institution setting up a private sector bank, So technically we are issued as a private sector bank. So when the private sector bank was there, then they wanted to have a law department. And therefore, I was asked to commissioned or, I was asked to set up a law department. And therefore I went to UTI Bank, as it was called, to set up their law department. So that was when I started my, tryst with destiny with regard to banking. So banking was something very interesting to me. And therefore, I would confess that, there is a question of survival also for me because, I'm thrown from one known thing to unknown thing. There are very big banking, and banking is, as you know, is that 25% is law and 75% is practice. So it is not a codified law. If you ask anything, why the bank is behaving like this, or why the bank is asking for me not to write in a yellow ink or a red ink a check, I cannot sign it. There is no clear-cut answer because it is practice. That is why banking is called banking law and practice. So therefore, there I also learned, and then my growth story is completely linked with my professional growth story, is completely linked to the growth of UTI Bank, which was rechristened as Axis Bank. And that is how, I learned the nuisance of all the banking and also financing and structured financing and all these things. And later, and from there, I had the opportunity or fortune to deal with an asset reconstruction company, India's first asset reconstruction company, where I was not only the legal advisor, but I was also dealing in the HR department. And then the urge in me, because, you see, always, I came from a practicing background, and therefore, and I need to practice it. And therefore, I left that and I started joining two firms, and subsequently, I'm now on my own. I set up a firm called BGK Law Associates, and that is where my story is. So I would say that I learned it from the practical side of it, and not by reading books or not by hearing something, but it is a hard-earned and a hard work. And, it is my real practical experience which has taken me to this level. And therefore, if at all I know anything about law or banking, that is because I owe it to all the people who mentored me or who helped me in that. And, the institutions which I worked and which give me a wider platform. That is my growth story.
I mean, Dr. Gopalakrishnan, that was actually what I wanted to convey, but it is always wonderful to hear from the mouth of the achievers what they have achieved. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. This has been a great introduction. And I actually had my first question was about a case. I wanted to understand about few cases of yours, but I guess you already explained quite few things, while covering yourself in it. So let's dwell down to some other aspects of the legal practice which we have seen happening in last 2 years. You see, uh, we all we all surpass or survive the times of pandemic, and if I talk about from the standpoint of lawyers or legal fraternity, we also courts begin moving towards more remote proceedings. What do you think, with your great experience? Is this sustainable? Is this a possible way to increase access to justice? What do you think, sir?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I would like to answer that question is that all on a sudden in the year 2020, on March 17th, if I precisely remember, we were told that there is going to be a lockdown for 2 weeks, and you have to go home and sit there and you can't do anything. We never took the enormity or assessed or fathomed what is in store for us. We all thought that okay, something for 2-3 weeks, and therefore we'll be coming back very soon. And add to that, the pandemic was something new to 90%, 99% of the generation who is now living in India. because I was told that the last pandemic was the Spanish flu, which happened in 1912. So I don't think that, hardly any people, except a few people who have lived and saw, who has been alive at 1912 with the memory to understand what is the Spanish flu and what is this pandemic. So like any one of us, see, I was also thinking that what is this? And later, when the role, the it extended, the dates extended, we know that there is a real problem which is happening. So that made us a little uncertain, and therefore all kinds of theories floated as to what is this pandemic, and how this pandemic can affect you. And all kinds of theories were there. And add to that, our WhatsApp University has been very active, and WhatsApp University has been giving all kinds of things, and so everybody was damn afraid what this is. So we can all see how the way we feared the pandemic in 2020 and how we faced the pandemic in 2022. So when 2020 gone, we never thought even in our dreams that we will be able to access to Indian justice system through a virtual mode, because that transformation was easy. And I think, I should thank all the people who thought about it and who transformed the courts to functioning to a virtual mode. That is something which happened. So one lesson you learn from this is that, contrary to the belief that our Indian legal system or judicial system will not change, we can change. Necessity is the mother of invention. So we changed. We never thought that. I never thought, that, I never even imagined. I think, many of the justices may not have imagined that I will be hearing a case on a virtual platform. So everything changed. And my feeling is that my belief even today is that it gave us a lot of, lot good for the advocates, especially the young advocates are tech savvy. And also people like us, see, I'm not very tech savvy, but, we also made ourselves available to this. And we also, again, adapted to that. And now today I feel that this is the system which should feel, because two things are there, if you don't, if the judicial system doesn't take otherwise. If I am going to attend a case in the High Court or in a tribunal or in a court, let us say that my item or is mentioned or itemized in serial number 10 or 15 or 30 or 14 a court. So, but I'll go there and stand there and thinking that my item may be called up at any time. So I'll be waiting there. And at the end of the day, I can simply say that, after X, the board is discharged, and therefore you have to come back. Your whole day is gone. So no productivity is there, except that you go and sit in the court. And yes, sometimes you learn from the court. But today it is not that. While sitting in my desk, I sit here, and whether my matter is itemized as 50 or 60, I'm not bothered about that. I know that, I'm doing some multitasking and I'm doing this. All I need is that to have an eye on my laptop to see that whether my item is coming or not. So that gives a lot of space for us, because today, it is, sitting here, my item comes, I can just log in, and, I keep logging, but, I can come and walk. But that I'll be in a protected environment, I'll do that. And another thing which I think I felt is that maybe, there is, all the advocates have a preferred area. So let me say that I'm practicing in Bombay High Court and, in the Mumbai courts. So today I may not be, if it was a physical hearing, I may not attend or take the wakalat of a case which is posted in, which is going to be heard in Delhi or in Supreme Court or anything. I'll say, okay, you appoint somebody there, because, see, going and coming is a costly affair, and, all those things are there. But today it is not so. If they are ready to hear it on a virtual thing, I can sit here and so it gives me a lot of opportunities to appear on a pan-India basis. And that way, one good thing is that the hidden talents who may not have reached the Supreme Court or other courts, so we will be able to get exposure from those courts by sitting here. So that is why I feel that I understand that there is a petition which is pending before the Supreme Court to declare that virtual hearing as a fundamental right for any judicial system is concerned. I think I support that because of the fact that, I get a better opportunity to, my client may not be in a position to appoint somebody in Supreme Court by paying a lot of money or something like that. And therefore, I may be in a position to explain the matter. So I can appoint somebody, he can ask the client can ask the same advocate to appear before the Supreme Court, provided the advocate is ready to do so through a virtual mode. So technology has to take over, and we have started it. I think much more has to be done, because in the lower courts, technology has still to be taken thing. And education and training of technology has to be given to the judicial staff, the judges, and the advocates. And therefore, I think in future we should have, or in continuing, or as we go on, it should be a hybrid system which should be there, because it saves a lot of things. So technology is there. So today, even otherwise also, earlier we used to spend a lot of money in purchasing books and keeping it, and that is the case laws or the judgments, like AIR, SEC. Today, at the click of a button, you get 100 cases to know whether everything is okay. So technology is playing a very good thing. So, we don't have to carry, everything, the entire life or entire thing is there in a laptop or in an iPad. So I think courts also has to now change to a paperless mode. So it may be difficult in the initial stage, let me tell you. It may be difficult because change always is difficult for every person, because you're thrown out of the comfort zone, and that comfort zone, and to adopt that. But I'm sure that we will adapt to that, because that comfort zone, when you're thrown into the arena like a Roman gladiator, definitely you will survive. You will do something to survive for your survival. I think, paperless courts has to come. And that is what maybe in 10 years or 5 years time, like the way we are changing into electric cars, and, we should go into a paperless courts. I think, this has its advantages. Yes, certain disadvantages are there, is that, the connectivity in India is not very, very high. So the connectivity problem, even sometimes, the connectivity problem is there. So I think with 5G coming now, let us hope that the connectivity will also improve. But there is always, there is a change, and when you're traveling, always the last few meters of before reaching the goal is always difficult. It's a very, very difficult path. So we have to go through it. And I'm sure that together, if we stand, we can have a big change in the entire judicial system.
That's very rightly said, Dr. Gopalakrishnan. I'm no one to add on to this. Your experience is way, way more far than I can even consider myself to be. But, as they say that when you think, my father always says, when you're feeling that you're losing it, that's the right time to give it a more push. And that's where you'll reach your destination. So I guess that's the last push that we all need. And my question again was about technology, how friendly or how overwhelming the technology can be for judicial system, for Indian judicial system. But I guess you covered that part in this answer as well. Now, for my personal curiosity, I also had some more answers, but you answered all, I had some more questions, but you answered all of them. So I would just now, as a young professional, not from the legal fraternity, but in a generic sense, you see, time is money for every. It's for every professional, but in legal industry, it's most of all. So from someone who has experienced, who has seen, from no mutual fund to now applications that we have thousands of mutual funds, if not hundreds, in our hand now. How do you make sure that you make best out of your time, be it anything, your professional or your personal? How do you do it, or how can we do it? What's your suggestion?
I think, there is only one answer. See, whatever you do, you have to have a conviction and passion. So conviction and passion has to be there to fulfill your dreams. Time is also like that. See, for example, when I come to the office and when I'm sitting here and when I start my work, I'm only concerned with that. And, definitely I should have the passion because, I should think that a lot of people have come to me like thinking that, or they have faith in me, they have trust in me. So I have to put my best to ensure that their faith doesn't go away. So passion has to be there, and there is nothing which stops you from learning. And I mean, legal profession is concerned till you drop dead, and if you're practicing, that is every day is for a learning. So when you, on the contrary, when you go home, I mean, Mike, is when you go home, I mean, you will have to switch it off and say that you are there as a father, husband, or a brother, or whatever it is, and you will have to ensure. So a balance is necessary. And today, I think that is possible. Let me tell you again, technology comes into the play. Because earlier, I mean, we can get up in the morning and plan our things because by the time you buy your mails and WhatsApp, you know what is in store for you on the day. And vice versa, when you sleep also, I mean, all of us, I think, I mean, youngsters like you must be much more, but, even a man like me, I mean, I'm so addicted to all these things. So we look at what is happening and therefore, there is no depth of knowledge or depth of information, which was never there some 25 years back, 20 years back, it was not there. Today, everything is at your fingertips. So therefore, you get a clearer, better understanding of how to plan your day and how to put your time into this thing. And therefore, you need not, I mean, suppose if you want to, I mean, delegate something. So some of your colleagues sitting somewhere, you can ask that this is it, and they can do it. So that is something which is great. But only thing, one thing I just want to tell, which you is that as far as India is concerned, there is a long way to go where there are a lot of people who are still much away from getting justice. Let me tell you, because justice now is now to a great extent, justice and the money or the your ability to spend are intermingled. So that has to change. And therefore, I think more and more youngsters or more and more people has to give it back to the society by spending time, by going into doing pro bono and coming to the legal services authority and helping the people, because that is not happening in India, because a section of the people enjoy everything and a section of the people are still far away from the justice, not because they nothing to do with the courts, because they have to be brought before the courts. Their grievance has to be brought before the courts, and then then only the courts can take action. So that gap has to be filled, and that can only be filled by people like us who are in practice or who have legal knowledge. And that is where I think the youngsters should say. So we are all, I'm not saying money is not important. So when you graduate and you become, or you get into a big law firm, or you get into a job, then your priorities change. But you have to keep some time for those people who cannot do that, and whose matters has to be brought before the judicial system. That is what is my request, or my request to the younger generation.
I mean, a very generous one. I hope this reaches to all the viewers who are watching this session. And we always appreciate pro bonos and people who are helping others to have access to justice and reducing the justice gap that we always talk about in our drawing rooms, having a sip of coffee and just bragging about it but not doing anything. So I guess that's a good point, Dr. Balakrishnan. Thank you very much. A wise word from a wise man. And again, thank you very much for sharing such great insights with us. This has been a lovely session, a great insightful session for me to understand about you, not just for you from you, but about the generic sense of what legal industry is all about and what's happening. Since you started and from where you are coming and from where we are coming. So it has been a lovely session. Thank you very much. And of course, we look forward to having you in future on to discuss on some other trending topics in the international legal industry. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Dr.
Ajay. See, one
Gopalakrishnan.
thing I just want is that, what is important is not the individual here. It is the system. I am a part of the system. See, without the system, there is no individual. And without the individual, there is no system. So I think it is intermingled. So we are all trying to change the system. So for that change of the system, each and every individual who is a part of the system has to change themselves. That's what I want. Thank you very much.
Yes, all us, sir. Thank you very much for the beautiful note in the end. And for our viewers now, if you, I hope that you did, but if you like this chat with Dr. Gopalakrishnan, I want you to like this video. I want you to share this video as much as you can. And of course, click on that red button to subscribe to Click Away Creators YouTube channel to appreciate what we do. And you have more coming in from legal industry leaders like Mr. B. Gopalakrishnan. This was Sagar for Let's Talk World signing off.